cook it yourself?
Well, Uncle Harry, a restaurant I know down in Boston, cooked it. But will you do me a favor? Try not to get one of them paws stuck in your teeth. That's right, Al. 100% grade A pepper.
No.
What's the matter, Al? You don't like pepper? You don't like the way pepper tastes? You don't like the way pepper looks? Huh? You don't like pepper? Huh? What's the matter with you, boy? Huh? You don't like the way pepper tastes? Huh? You don't like what? No way. Pepper's not going to take an elevator today. You're going to eat every damn bite of the little son of a bitch. I told you, if he bit me again, I was going to send him straight to hell. Huh? You understand me, Al? Huh? You understand me, what this is all about? This is hardcore, and you can damn well bet. Huh? You can damn well bet. Huh? Yeah, I'm hardcore all the way. I told you Pepper was going to live with you for the rest of his life. Unless you go to the poop shoot or something. Huh?
Welcome, everybody, to episode 12 of the Pseudo Nerd Podcast for March 25th, 2016. I am your podcast host, Josh Kiser, and joining me today, Mr. Joshua Haddix.
Hello, everybody.
And Kyle Hoagland.
I am not a nugget. What's up?
Speaking of chicken nuggets.
Speaking of chicken nuggets.
I don't know.
What?
Oh, God.
So how you guys doing today?
Unless we just broke that with chicken nuggets. I'm good. What the hell did I do today? Had lunch with our buddy Matt and his wife. They're here for the weekend. They're going to wine country tomorrow, and then I think we're going to Chinatown on Friday. So that'll be a good time.
Are you guys going to use the front door when you go to Chinatown or the back door?
You know what? Is that even really the name of the porno? Because I thought it was called like
I thought it was back
one night.
I
thought it was called One Night in China.
Well,
I think it is One Night in China.
She's made multiple.
Nothing I know. I mean, I read about it, and people don't.
Says the manual, right, guys?
Exactly. I think she's been in a couple of. Wasn't she in like a WrestleMania parody where everyone was like dressed up?
She basically gets gang banged by like 8 fake wrestlers.
She's been in a few. She's been in a few at this point now, which is going to keep
Times
her out
are
of
rough,
healthy.
Once Triple H leaves you for the daughter of the owner of WWE. So
Yeah.
And what you gonna do? Life happens.
Life happens. And while we continue rolling forward with our WWE podcast this week, we're going to give some top 3 lists. But before we do that, I just want to remind everybody, get out there, subscribe to us on iTunes. Give us that follow. Give us that review. I haven't checked recently, but I'm pretty sure Haddix still has not left his review. Is that safe to say?
I really want Haddix to go on there and put a 1-star and just say, this is garbage.
I'm going to say these guys, all they do is bully me into trying to do things I don't want to do. So
like butt stuff?
Hey, just like that. So yeah, I need to go do that.
And so do our PMPers out there. Go leave us some comments and reviews. Subscribe. You know what? Why don't you guys tell your friends? Let's get these downloads and these plays. Let's jump this number up. Tell them we're talking about wrestling all month. That should sell them. If nothing else does.
I said we're getting desperate here. I'm putting out YouTube videos of stuff just to get the brand out there. I mean, come on, guys, we can do this. We can get a couple more people.
Speaking of that, Kyle, why don't you tell everybody? Because I'm sure, unless people are following us on Twitter or Facebook, they may not realize what little bonus features we released this week.
So I haven't decided exactly how often we're going to do this. I think it's now that I've got an idea of how to do it and do the format, it would actually be really quick to do. But we put out a 2-parter inaugural, special or whatever called Test Your Knowledge, where Kiser goes up against Haddix just to see exactly how much of a loser both of them are. This week's winner, no surprise to Haddix, is Kiser. with this
no
one was
surprise to me either.
No surprise. They did a I guess a sound like a name that tune of the Attitude Era themes, and it's safe to say that Kiser was a resounding winner in that one. But you know what? Haddix did put up a good fight. He did get, I recounted and I did give you credit actually for Ringmaster because I don't think anyone gave you enough hints for Ringmaster Haddix. So you actually got 11 out of 20. So I mean, you know, that's something to put on a resume.
That's average right there. That's what you call that. And I'll take it.
55% is average?
Hey dude, I'm above that median, all right?
Is that like a D? Is that like a D in like a central school somewhere? I don't know.
Hey, this is pass fail, all right?
On a curve, you probably pass because it's not like Kiser got a perfect, although he did pretty well.
You know, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to quizzes, I might be underrated at times, which leads us into our first top 3 list. Which Hougie,
that was a segue. Wow, you just stealth segued that.
That was my segue right there.
That was my favorite segue.
Thank you, I appreciate that. We're all doing our top 3 lists, and Hougie, we're gonna let you start. And basically, you're doing underused, underrated, undervalued, wasted talent, however you want to put it. Is this going to be all history? I'll let you kind of take the floor now.
So I kind of changed my format without telling you guys. So sorry, but I still have 3 guys.
Well, that was 28 hours of prepared notes that I can just throw out the window.
No, it's still the same people that I've mentioned. So, what I'm doing is I have one guy that is a wasted talent who ended up doing great things. But the WWE just didn't know how to use him. Kind of like how WCW didn't know how to handle Bret Hart. That's kind of like a good example of that. But on the WWE side, and then I have another one that is going to go with current wrestlers who I think who are being the least utilized and most wasted. And then finally, one that I think had all the potential in the world, but was never utilized correctly for one reason or another. So one of each of that topic, I guess. So not like
okay.
I'm not ranking them. They're just 3 in different categories of the same, discussion. So the first one I'm going to talk about in this one is the wrestler I think that WWE really missed the mark as far as talent-wise, who ended up going on to having a Hall of Fame career, and that is Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. This was a guy that in the 80s was probably, as far as talent, I mean, can either one of you guys even like tell me if there was a guy with as much talent as the Dragon in the 80s than Steamboat?
That was before I got into things. So
I mean, to be fair, Haddix, I was 5 not even. I turned 4 in '89. So
I feel like most wrestling fans have seen a couple of things of Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and know about his legacy. As far as
yeah. When it comes to Steamboat, I've seen a lot of his stuff. But if you want me to compare him to other wrestlers of the '80s that may be underutilized, I can't do that too well.
Well, I think of it more of like if you go back in the 80s, it was a lot of big muscle bound guys punching and kicking, leg drop, and you win the title, like Hulk Hogan.
Oh yeah, it was all about size and to some
flair,
degree,
and it was just it was more like a spectacle. It wasn't technical, mat wrestling. So when you got a guy like Ricky the Dragon Steamboat who comes in 1987 at WrestleMania 2, I think it was 3.
3.
Yeah, it had to have been 3 because that was the same one as it was the same match or the same WrestleMania as Hogan fighting Andre the Giant. So that was 3. That was probably the most iconic match of WrestleMania 3, Hogan versus Andre, obviously, but the one that really stole the show, it was a match that was hard to kind of follow. Was Randy Savage fighting Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, which is still to this day a lot of even wrestlers have said it's one of their favorite matches of all time. And that doesn't stop there. It's not like he just had that one match. WWE really didn't know what to do with him. He was always a great worker, but it seemed like they just didn't know what to do with him. So he ended up going back to NWA, which then later became WCW, and ended up having about 3 or 4 5-star matches with Ric Flair. And they went back and forth during their primes. And I think it was like right before Flair came to the WWE for like a very short period of time. I think he was the world champ when he came over, but it was just, I feel like WWE really missed it. And he's a Hall of Famer. WWE inducted him in 2009. He actually had a match in 2005. 2005? When did he fight Jericho? He had a match.
Yeah, it was somewhere in the mid 2000s.
Yeah, and it was actually a very good match. Like, he actually could hold his own. He was like in his late 50s. And I think he's 63 right now, so we're assuming he was probably in his late 50s, mid to late 50s when he had that match against Jericho. And Jericho has gone on the record saying that was one of his favorite matches because he always said that was the wrestler that he looked up to, that he one day wanted to become, was Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Yeah, I mean, Steamboat definitely, to your point, was a phenomenal in-ring talent, but I think he was almost born too early. That sort of style of wrestling and character, and he sort of had that HBK body type and things like that, which when he came up was not the norm and not what they pushed. So he was more of a Intercontinental title sort of mid-card range guy, but in another life he would have been a headliner for sure.
Yeah, in the NWA and WCW, I think they kind of liked having that kind of wrestler because when you have Ric Flair as your money getter, your main event attraction, you can tell that they're not really pushing for the muscle bound, superhero like larger than life characters. They're actually looking for athleticism and talent. I can't really remember too many people in the NWA that had like the kind of look like a Hogan did.
Yeah, I could agree with that, but I'm not completely in tune with the NWA days, so I can't speak too strongly on it. Gotcha.
So, Hax, I know you don't really know too much about him, so I can just probably move on to the next one. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, I got nothing for that. I agree with you.
So the next one I'm going to talk about is a wrestler that I think had all the talent in the world, and it just never ended up happening ever, and that is Owen Hart. Owen Hart, to me, was probably about as talented as anybody, and he had really everything he needed. He obviously had the right kind of training. I think he had enough charisma. I think he had more charisma than his brother. And he made.
You could argue that he had more charisma and was a better in-ring guy than Bret.
And the thing is, as far as being athletic and high flying, being fun to watch, definitely Owen than Bret. Bret was a guy was a mat technician, holds and striking, whereas Owen was high flying but still had the same capabilities. It's just that he had I think it's safe to say
he was just more athletic.
Yeah, he had a bigger utility belt of things he could do than Bret.
And a bigger nose.
And definitely a larger nose. But I think the sad thing that happened was, he just really never got that opportunity to shine because of Bret. And I think it also had a lot to do with, once again, just like Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, he came in around the time where if he was going to come and wrestle during his prime, he would have had to go up against people like The Rock and Stone Cold and Mankind and The Undertaker. And it seemed like there just was no room for Owen Hart to really flourish. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, I mean, I would argue to a degree that there was hints and moments where it looked like they knew what they had in Owen. I mean, between his feud with Bret and they gave him the Intercontinental title for a period of time. I think he was overshadowed, to your point, by some of these other larger than life and bigger stars, the growing of The Rock and Austin and things like that. But Owen feuded with these guys, was with these guys to a degree. So I think, had the unfortunate tragedy not happened and he kept wrestling, I think down the line you would have seen him as a world champion. But I agree that they could have pushed him a lot sooner and used him better than they did, because by, towards the end there, he was tagging and dressing like the Blue Blazer and kind of being an idiot with Jeff Jarrett. So There
It
was
almost seemed like they buried him for some reason. Like he had one world title opportunity, I believe, and that was against Shawn Michaels. It was a revenge match after the Montreal Screwjob. And that was really like, I felt like that was going to be Owen Hart's real chance to become a main eventer because the story is there. You know, it's real. It's a personal, you know, vendetta.
Oh yeah, I mean that
Michaels.
was almost a cash grab of ways.
Exactly. That would have made good money and at least would have led up to, you know, something happening with Austin because obviously I think everyone knew that Austin was coming. You know, he was already there, but as far as what would end up becoming the explosion that became Austin, but at the time, like Owen Hart definitely could have been up there with Hunter and The Rock. Like that could have easily been the three of them going at it for, you know, dominance in the Intercontinental range, and then later on as a world champ. Because Owen Hart was actually younger than Austin, so I mean he had years. He was in his prime when he died at 34.
Yeah, so, he definitely was. But if you believe what Brett has said, you know, post Owen's death in discussing things, there's definitely talks that he said Owen didn't have the passion that Brett had for the business, and Owen was like wanted to make his money and get out when he could. So there's a chance that maybe they just saw that he didn't have that drive on a personal level where he was talented with it, did it, but he didn't want to make a entire life out of it. So maybe that's part of the reason why he never got that push.
Yeah. Anything from the Haddix side? I'm about to go to the next.
Yeah, nothing that wouldn't just be reiterating what you guys said. I think you guys covered it all.
Okay, so the last guy, and I think you guys are going to be surprised. I don't know what I am so angry that this particular guy is not further in his career than he currently is. In fact, it's actually very sad where he is right now. I was thinking about doing Dolph Ziggler as far as the wrestler I was going to pick in the current roster that's not being utilized correctly. And the only reason why is because he is a 2-time world champion, so it's not like he's never been to the top of the company for a little while. Or at least he's had the top, title.
But yes.
He's had the top title, but he's never been on the top of the company. Let's put it that way. The guy I want to talk about is the Long Island Ice Z, Zack Ryder. So a lot of you listeners, even guys people who are watching wrestling right now, might be asking you, who the hell is Zack Ryder? Zack Ryder, a couple of years ago, was probably one of the most popular wrestlers, and he did it by himself. He's like the opposite of Roman Reigns right now. Roman Reigns is kind of like, once again, becoming slowly but surely the new John Cena, where he's getting pushed as being the next thing, but he's not doing it on his own. Zack Ryder created a YouTube channel. He had, he made up his own title, the internet, the internet world champion. And there were times for a good while, probably a good year and a half, where there would be, Raws and pay-per-views and SmackDowns where people are yelling for Zack Ryder. It's almost like when Daniel Bryan was making his emergence. So it was like the pre-Daniel Bryan era, where people really liked the guy and they really wanted to see him succeed because clearly he has a passion to succeed and people gravitate to that. And he was very charismatic. He was very good on the mic, and he is good enough of a wrestler. Like he has the look. He's very athletic looking. He's strong. There's nothing about his look that there's a problem with. So what always confused me was they took that moment where he was hitting this like peak of his popularity, and they put the United States title on him. He beat Dolph Ziggler for the title. He held on to it for a very short period of time, but during that time, like, people loved him. Like, they were happy he got the title. They felt that it was well deserved and that he worked very hard to get to that point. And then the next thing you know, he gets his ass kicked by Kane at Royal Rumble. He gets put in a wheelchair. He gets dumped by Eve Torres, and now what? Like, he's back to being a low card. He's not even on Raw. If he's on Raw every once in a while, it's whatever. But the problem is that, unfortunately, with everything else that's happened with Daniel Bryan and other storylines, now unfortunately Zack is in a period where he doesn't have that momentum anymore, and it's really tough to create that again. So I'm really scared that he's just not going to ever get that opportunity because he had it, and I just don't see what the future holds for that guy. But it's a shame because he's very talented.
So have you watched Raw this week?
This week? No, I have not. Why was he on?
Yeah, he's got an Intercontinental title match at WrestleMania.
Oh my God, are you serious?
That's awesome.
So do you think he's going to win, though? Do you honestly think he's actually going to win?
Well, when I say he's got an Intercontinental title match, he is one of 7 people in a ladder match.
Then I don't want to hear it
title.
then. Like, that's...
And
he's not going to win a 7-man.
There's a pretty good chance that he probably is replacing Neville because Neville broke his ankle or something. So he's probably the replacement for him. But I just had to laugh because I read a stat earlier today that Zack Ryder has been in like 6 championship matches in his entire career or something like that. Some sort of ridiculous. I was trying to pull it up while you're talking. I can't find it right now. But it was a ridiculous amount of low number of times to be in a title match of any sort. To your point, he was the most over guy at one point, self-put over, which I think was part of the reason why, because they say that they want you to grab the brass ring and try to make something of yourself, but then you go and do it, and because they didn't have a part in it, they get all pissy, and he pretty much buried him.
I mean, if you're not going to if you're not going to put him on TV, what the hell is he supposed to do? You know, like he's got to put himself over. That's his only choice. So I don't know if it seems like they're just angry that because he got this popularity without them, they feel like, oh crap, like they almost feel forced to put him in things when that was not the plan. That was, I don't know how far ahead in the writing there is with this, but that's the only thing I can think of is that it became more of a hindrance than an opportunity with his success or with his popularity.
Right, and I'd like to at least see the guy make some sort of comeback. I don't know.
He's still young. He's still young. He's definitely is capable of. He's a lot younger than a lot of the guys right now that I think people are saying they're making their emergences or reaching their peak. So I mean, there's time, but it's tough when you've already been in the business for as long as he has been to then all of a sudden become, possibly
not
the guy.
A has been.
Right. Good one.
Thank you. That's what I got to bring the jokes to this segment. So
you guys agree or disagree with anybody I said? Was there anybody you thought I should have talked about?
No, I mean, we could probably go through a list of 5 or 6 other people that, never got the chance that they probably deserved. And to your point, when you said that Owen, Ricky was never used, sort of got that WCW treatment that Bret Hart got. WCW didn't know how to use any of their talent. So, I mean, if you went that route, you could it'd be easier to list the number of people that actually got pushed correctly in WCW. But when it came to WWE, there's definitely people that got mixed in the shuffle. I wouldn't be surprised if Dolph Ziggler becomes a what if down the line if his career doesn't ever go, if he peaked already, which would be unfortunate. But yeah, I mean, we could go through the list and name other people, but I think your list gave a good summary of 3 people from different eras that never reached the highest level, and they definitely could have.
I would agree with that. I think the 3 guys you mentioned didn't make it for different reasons, and I guess we could debate what those are, but so they were good choices.
And since Haddix has literally just talked our ears off for the last 25 minutes or so, I'm going to put the floor over to you. I know the listeners are sick of hearing all of your input today, but why don't you go ahead and talk about your topic on sex and drugs and rock and roll or whatever that is you're discussing.
So as we talked last week and the week prior to that, the sex appeal was one of the main draws of the Attitude Era. They were doing risky things and a lot of sexual things. I
think Hougie used the word risque multiple times.
Risque.
It was almost going to be last week's podcast drinking game.
Okay, it was very risque. So on that topic, there was a lot of things that happened in the Attitude Era, maybe even slightly before, slightly after, before we got to this PG era that were just very sexually explicit. So I chose 3 in no necessary order. I'm going to give them to you chronologically, just because.
So that isn't in order then. That's not necessarily an order. That is in order.
That is true. Okay, not in order of what I think is the worst or anything like that. I'm going to give it to you in a chronological order.
There you go. That's better.
So the first one, which is a very iconic moment, which I feel like anyone who was watching wrestling during the Attitude Era, maybe even some people who weren't, took place at Fully Loaded 1998, and it was a bikini contest between Sable and Jacqueline. Without getting into too much detail about the storyline,
because no one cares about the storyline.
Well, yeah, I mean, Sable
there was a storyline?
Yes. And it was that Jacqueline took Mark Marrow, which was Sable's husband. I think they were still technically married in real life, but on the show, they had split up, and they went back and forth about who had the best body. So, of course, WWE capitalized on it, had a little bikini contest on Fully Loaded. Jacqueline ends up going first, and she takes off her robe, and she has this very, very skimpy bikini on. And actually, at one point while she's kind of walking around the ring, her nipple pops out, which was complete accident.
We call that a wardrobe malfunction.
That is a wardrobe. That's the old Janet Jackson.
Yeah, get PC on here, man. This is 2016.
After that, Sable goes, and she takes off this very baggy shirt she has on, and she's wearing a thong and like just a normal average shirt. And everyone's obviously disappointed. You know, Lawler, as in his typical self, kind of gets a little
perverted
sad.
Self.
Yeah, you know, he asks her like, "Well, that's not the bikini you told us you were gonna have." She goes on this big spiel, ends up taking off her top, and her bikini is actually 2 handprints that are covering up the old nip-naps there. And obviously the crowd goes wild. Jerry Lawler goes wild in the ring. It's like one of his happiest moments ever. Needless to say, Vince McMahon comes down to the ring, covers Sable up, and ends that. But it was, especially for 1998, a very scandalous moment in wrestling, and it was amazing. Everyone
now, to be fair, it was on pay-per-view at the time.
That it was. It was on a pay-per-view.
I don't think USA would have, you know, agreed to it. It wouldn't sign on to that.
Right, and it was basically when you say the handprints too for our listeners, it was almost like body paint of some sort.
Yeah, it was a body paint in the shape of a hand, basically. So she didn't have a bikini top on, really. It was like paint on her boobs.
Do you remember if this was post or pre Playboy for her?
You know, that I do not know.
I'm almost certain that's pre. I think that's what got her.
I think it was too.
I think that's what got her in the door to pose for Playboy.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking as
well.
Well,
and she didn't pose for Playboy while she was in the WWE, did she?
Oh, absolutely. She posed twice.
Oh yeah, she did, because they revealed the
oh, that's
cover.
Right. They did. So yeah, that's that moment. It was a very iconic moment. Like, you see it a lot of the Sable pictures are that picture.
I mean, honestly, yeah. When you think of Sable, that's probably the first thing I think of.
It's probably that and the outfit she wore to the Slammies, which was that black like see-through thing with, again, little like pasties over the nipples.
Right.
Those are like the 2 main ones.
And then the fact that she could like powerbomb people.
Well, yeah.
Isn't she married to Brock Lesnar?
Oh yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Her third marriage, I believe.
Her third marriage?
Yeah.
I mean, first, the way you made it sound like seem like they got married 3 times.
No, yeah, her third husband, I guess. So.
Gotcha. Well, I know,
Anyway.
at least Mark Marrow. I thought she
was married to a
Goldberg.
nobody. She was married to a nobody before, and I think he died in like a car accident or something.
Dude, Mark Marrow is not a nobody, all right?
Dude, that's Johnny B. Bad.
Oh, good old Mark Marrow. So, you guys got any comments on that?
I mean, boobies are good. That's all I gotta say about that.
That's
I think we've talked enough.
Yeah, that's what the WWE is going on. So my second moment, or second list or number, whatever the hell, took place at Armageddon 1999. So not very long
after. And for
after.
our viewers, that is also a pay-per-view.
This is also a pay-per-view. And it was an evening gown pool match. So your typical, pay-per-view match, right, guys? Right?
I mean, there's been about, I think, a good handful of those, a lot of iconic matches.
So I believe Michaels and Austin had a couple of those.
Yeah, a couple of evening gown pool matches. So for those of you who don't know, an evening gown match, you win by ripping off the evening gown that your opponent is wearing. And the pool match part of it was basically that took place in a pool. So
very clever, WWF.
Yeah, very clever. And it actually, to add to it, was between 4 women. The current champ, Ivory, Miss Kitty.
Was this for a title?
This was for the women's champ title.
Oh,
and that'll come into play here in a second.
Oh, really?
So BB, Jacqueline, Miss Kitty, and Ivory, who's a current champion, they all get in a pool. Ends up coming down to Miss Kitty against Ivory. She tears off her evening gown, which, if you guys watch it back, it's like horrible. Like, she's like flailing around in the water while she's trying to take off her evening gown.
Wait. Are you trying to tell me that this match wasn't technically sound?
It was just horrible.
Believe it or not, this is not in the top 10 best wrestling matches of all time.
Although not in the top.
Dave Meltzer did not give 5 stars to this match.
This may not even be the top 10 wrestling matches at Armageddon, which only had 6 matches on the card.
Well, actually, it was probably the top match at Armageddon. And here's why. Dum dum dum. She wins.
Dude, you totally hooked everybody. Anybody who was not listening just now, like zoned out for a minute, they're like, holy shit, this guy, he just reeled me back in.
I inched closer. Who won? You said she won. Who won?
Miss Kitty wins the women's title.
God damn it.
Okay. So she gets out of the pool. She's standing there. She's celebrating. And she gets a mic and says, I promised, that you guys would see me naked. And she had said on the Raw previous that she doesn't wear underwear. So she takes off her evening gown to celebrate and basically comes through on her promise of not wearing underwear. So she takes her top off on live TV, although it is a pay-per-view, and exposes her breast to everybody. And
the crowd went wild.
The crowd loved it. Although, while this was supposed to be something that spontaneously happened, somehow Sergeant Slaughter was conveniently...
wasn't Slaughter there to cover her up?
He was conveniently talking as soon as she took her top off, he was there with a towel. So I don't know how that happened sporadically, if he was there. But anyway, we got to see Miss Kitty's boobies.
I don't believe you. I'm actually doing some research right now just to see if this actually did happen. So I'm going to go ahead. You go ahead and go with your next thing. But
you can watch it on WWE Network. Armageddon 1999.
He doesn't want to watch it on WWE Network, dude.
Oh, you want to watch the actual?
I'm going to say WWE Network's not going to have that.
Well, I mean,
on
you
there.
Could Google her boobs and find many pictures.
That's what he was doing. That's the joke.
Don't you worry about that. Daily Motion seems to have it.
Yes, they do.
But that's sad, though. I mean, just a
Daily
comment.
Motion. Haddix's third topic will play right into that.
Yes.
But before I ruin that, I'm just saying, as said that match was for a title, like a non-wrestling match.
That kind of goes back. That kind of plays back into our talk last week about how
the women's division.
Yes. So
yeah, it's actually wrestling now, even though they call it the Divas title. And then back then, when it was the Women's Championship, it was demoted to bikini matches, pillow fights, lingerie battles, evening gowns, mud pits, all that kind of stuff to determine female champions. So really was a sexist era, but for 14-year-old boys, it was ideal.
So going into my third choice here, this one actually did take place on Raw in 2006. It took place right after New Year's Revolution. And for those of you who don't know, New Year's Revolution was when Edge finally won the WWE title. So he comes out on Raw the next day to celebrate his victory. He, at that time, I think in real life and in wrestling, was with Lita. So him and Lita walk to the ring. There's a bed in the middle of the ring. And he tells the crowd that he's going to celebrate winning the title by banging Lita in the middle of the ring. So they actually strip down to their underwear. She's in her bra and panties. He's in his underwear. They start grinding on each other a little bit. And then they get under the covers. Obviously a lot of stuff, a lot of movements going on. You got Lawler over there on the announce table talking about, oh, what's he doing sliding down there? Yada, yada, yada.
Give him play-by-play.
Typical perverted Lawler.
Typical Lawler. So while this is all going on, you see Edge come up and has like her panties and bra and throws them out of the bed. She goes down. She throws some underwear out of the bed. And you're like, all right, this is about to happen. And for those of you who are masters at the pause button, like I'm sure Kiser was back in the Dizzy, there is a point where the covers kind of come down and you do see Lita's boob, although it is a very, very fast second, but it does happen. Why she actually took her bra off under there, I have no idea. Me and Kiser were talking about this yesterday.
Hey, she's into the moment, man. She's acting.
She definitely was. However,
for sure.
After all that happens, this is interrupted. Obviously, they didn't, consummate in the middle of the ring. My favorite part about all of this was Ric Flair comes out to interrupt this and basically says that Edge is ashamed of the belt and then tells him he's going to show him how to make love to a woman. So he goes down to the ring and ends up getting his ass beat by Edge. And then John Cena comes out. Yeah, nothing else happens after that. But Ric Flair coming down there telling Edge he's about to make some love to Lita was probably my favorite part about the whole thing.
That's some classic 1985 Ric Flair.
Classic Ric Flair, dude. Of course, he rips out a couple good lines in there while he's ripping on Edge, but then he ends up getting his ass beat with a chair and gets all bloody on the side of the ring. But anyway,
he is a consummate bleeder, by the way. Ric
yes,
Flair.
he is. Yes, he is. So that was, I feel like, maybe slightly bigger than the others because it did happen on Raw. While you didn't see anything other than maybe a quick boob flash, but they were basically banging in the middle of the ring on an episode of Raw.
To the dismay of Matt Hardy.
I was just going to add something about that.
What's so weird about that, too, is that Matt Hardy does return like a little bit later to the company, and they used it as a feud for a little bit.
Yeah, they make a feud out of it, right? For the people that don't know, Matt Hardy and Lita were together, and
they're
him
engaged,
and Edge
I believe.
were buddies, and then Edge and Lita were like banging behind the scenes, and pretty much ruined Matt Hardy for a long time.
Don't worry, Matt Hardy, he picks himself up and he winds up having a stellar career. Oh, wait. I think he had a couple of drug problems and got arrested.
Oh, Jeff Hardy had more drug problems, but Matt had his share, I'm sure.
I'm sure. I'm surprised that, obviously you only have 3 to talk about, but, when I think of Scandal and just like shock and whatever, is the escapades of one Mae Young.
Well, and those were obviously on there, but I feel like those kind of go more into like the disgusting sexy type of thing.
Which is
more
a perfect segue into my topics. And we've discussed, the fact that they're going to have a live sex celebration on TV, and the fact that Raw has now had over 1,000 episodes. That's a lot of scripts to write, a lot of storylines to write. So there's gonna be times, especially back in the Attitude Era when they're trying to push the envelope, where some just crazy stories come out. And I'm going to give a few quick honorable mentions of stories that never made it, but that were pitched. The first being Stephanie was pregnant, and Vince pitched the idea that it was going to be Vince McMahon pitched the idea that the baby was going to be his. Mind you, Stephanie is his daughter. And that, of course, disgusted Stephanie because she didn't want to have a storyline where her dad impregnated her. So then he said, "Oh, how about Shane, your brother?" Needless to say, that never.
Oh, that's better.
Yeah. There was a Disco Inferno, a classic WCW wrestler who had some input with stories, pitched the idea that aliens would invade the roster, and they would have them abducting wrestlers. And Hougie, you'll appreciate this. The mastermind behind the whole invasion was going to be Mike Tenay.
What?
Yes, yeah.
The professor?
The professor Mike Tenay. Needless to say, that went nowhere and didn't make it anywhere. And then
that's shocking.
A third one was they wanted to have a Nazi general character who was cryogenically frozen and come back as basically like Hitler incarnate.
Please tell me Disco was in charge of that one too.
No, that was actually a WWE storyline that didn't make it anywhere. I guess somebody pitched the idea to Vince. Vince picked up his briefcase and walked out of the room when it was brought up.
Like, that's got to be a dare. That can't be real. That's someone like got the short straw and got to pitch an idea that everybody thought of that would never work. But it was like, hey, you have to tell this one to Vince and hopefully not get fired.
So you would think so, but the couple storylines I'm about to give you guys right now, you would also think should never make their way to television, and yet here we are. So the first story I'm going to start with is the Triple H Katie Vick story. And this started out innocently enough. Kane and Hurricane were tag team champions at the time. And basically, Kane gets screwed. They beat up Hurricane or something, so Kane's not around for the match. Or Hurricane's not around for the match. Kane ends up winning still, regardless. Triple H comes out and says he has a secret to reveal about Kane. He knows that Kane is a murderer. So that ends the first week of Raw. They bring it out the next time, and Kane admits that he had a DUI where he was driving with his girlfriend, Katie Vick, at the time. He was drunk, got a DUI. She died in the car crash. Triple H makes fun of him because that's an appropriate way of getting heel heat.
Absolutely.
And Kane started getting consoled by Terry Reynolds, and there started being a love interest there, which really plays no more role into this story other than they just decided to throw that in there. This is where things get awkward. The next week, Triple H says he has a video of what a disgusting acts Kane did. And they cut to this video, and you can find this on YouTube. This is legit. It's Triple H wearing a shirt that says, like, the big frickin' red machine or something, like a play on words for Kane. He's wearing the Kane mask, and he walks up to a casket. And inside the casket is a dummy of a girl in a cheerleading outfit who is supposed to be Katie Vick, Kane's girlfriend. And he basically tells her he apologizes and how she denied him. He just wanted to grab her boobs while they were driving in the car, and had she let him grab his boobs, he never would have gotten the wreck and killed her. And then he proceeds to rip off her panties and start groping the casket of this dead body. He actually takes the panties at one point, sniffs them, and says, "I love the smell of formaldehyde." He follows that up by climbing inside the casket, taking his shirt off, and having his way, and they sort of cut to scenes of like candles while he's making grunting noises. He ends it by saying, "Oh yes, I can't believe I did this," and he pulls out what's supposed to be brain matter and said, "I screwed your brains out." Needless to say, they end up having a casket match about a week later on Raw. HBK helps Kane win because HBK and Triple H started feuding for the world title, and Kane was reduced to tagging with Hurricane. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the storyline of Katie Vick and Triple H, and why people thought necrophilia was going to be a great way to push a story.
That's horrible, dude. Horrible. I'm surprised Vince greenlighted that.
Vince, let's put it this way. Vince has always said that there's nothing that for the sake of getting, I guess either ratings or just getting more people in, nothing was off limits. Even him.
Except for Nazis.
So I'm not shocked. I mean, the Nazi thing or the alien thing is ridiculous. That's ridiculous. That is shock value.
But necrophilia is not?
Well, once again, necrophilics are out there. People cryogenically frozen Hitlers and
aliens could be out there, dude. We might have to have a podcast to discuss our thoughts on extraterrestrials one of these days.
People are really going to want to know our input.
When Independence 2, Day 2 comes out, Jesus Christ. We'll have that
botched
podcast.
The hell out of that.
Wow. Well, he doesn't give a crap. Will Smith's not in it, so
that's true.
Like, he cares.
So moving on to the second story. This one, I don't know if you think this one's worse or not. Again, my list isn't really in any particular order. This is the Big Boss Man Al Snow feud. And it started out, Al Snow, for those of you who don't know, was a kind of a wrestler who sort of played this role like had like a little crazy, like had some mental issues of sorts, and he ended up carrying around a mannequin head with him. And it actually worked out well, because at the time he'd come out to the theme music, which Haddix knows is, "What does everybody want?" And then everybody would say head and that kind of thing. And eventually Prince Albert actually impaled the mannequin head on a stick, thus killing it, of course. So this left Al Snow to start coming out with a Chihuahua, a live dog Chihuahua that he named Pepper. Well, the Big Boss Man, who was as much of a scoundrel as they came in those days, kidnaps the dog and tells Al Snow he can get it back if Al Snow can defeat Big Boss Man in a hardcore title match. To Snow's credit, he wins the match, but Boss Man, being the scoundrel and dirty, sorry loser that he is, still took Pepper the dog and leaves with him. So they go back and forth, and Al Snow says he really wants his dog. So Big Boss Man says, you know what, meet me in my hotel room. I'll return your dog and, apologize for everything. So there's a segment where they're in the hotel room, and Big Boss Man comes in, has what do you call it when they bring food into the room?
Room service?
Room service, that's the word, thank you. He has the room service cart wheeled in, and Al Snow sits down, he said, feed him, and Al Snow's, I want my dog, and he said, he's at the groomers, I'll get him to you soon. So Al Snow starts eating the food, and that's when Big Boss Man tells him that the food is actually his dog, and he made him eat his dog. This, causes a fight, and this ends up leading to a Kennel from Hell match, which was basically a steel cage built around the ring with a Hell in the Cell built around it, and then between the two cages, they brought trained vicious dogs, a pack of wild dogs, I think was actually what they called them, which were basically a bunch of Rottweilers. And the match, while it was supposed to be cool in theory, turned out to be a really crappy hardcore match while the dogs humped each other, peed on the ground, and took a shit. And even at one point when the dogs were chasing after Big Boss Man after Al Snow won the match, they chased down the aisle. One of the dog trainers fell, and it just became a hysterically awful match, and it's pretty embarrassing. But one important note of all this, and Hougie, you would appreciate this, this story was actually based off of a true story where apparently Mr. Fuji, former manager for Yokozuna, allegedly killed his neighbor's dog and fed it to him. So that's where they got the story from.
That is cold-blooded. I was just sad about that. Was actually a pretty good feud during the time. I mean, for something that wasn't really for anything to be, it was just basically two guys with no aspirations of really being champion of any sort other than maybe the hardcore championship back then. But it was really interesting to go through it. And once again, it's one of those where it had a great long-lasting feud that then got completely fizzled by no payoff, which it should have been if the match probably would have been choreographed or handled better than it actually did. Because I watched that match not that long ago, and it is probably top 5 probably worst matches I've seen.
I mean, it's right up there with it can't compare to the Miss Kitty evening gown pool match for sure. I mean,
that's a classic. That was for
classic.
a title. Yeah,
right.
it was for the women's title.
This one was for the hardcore title.
Oh, okay. So one of them was actually the championship.
Yeah,
okay,
they're both for titles. Dude, you talk about a match that even if it was done, like, let's say the match went well, that match could not happen today with, like, the dogs thing. Like people would be all over that. They couldn't even do the
story about eating a dog anymore.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. Like,
Peter
anything that had to do, even if, like, the match ended up being awesome or something like that, still wouldn't be able to get away with it today.
You know what it reminds me of right now when you talk about, like, killing a dog and making him eat it? Do you remember in WCW when, was it Eddie killed, or it was either Saturn or it was Eddie that killed Pepe? The Chavo's, like,
thing.
His little horse is like horse on a stick. Yeah. He, like, put it through a wood chipper. Oh, yes. God.
Well, and there's a lot of silly things that wrestling does, and sometimes they fail miserably, much like eating the dog in the Kennel from Hell match. Sometimes they work, like the Pepe on the horse on a stick that he rode around. People loved that. And the next story I'm going to tell you here, my final one for absurd stories in wrestling, was the Mark Henry Mae Young storyline. And to put this in perspective for some people, Mae Young was a former women's champion wrestler of, like, the 50s and 60s. And by the time of the Attitude Era, she was in her mid-70s. And at the time of this storyline, she was actually 77 years old. Picture this frail old person, like a grandmother. And then you've got Mark Henry, who at the time was nicknamed Sexual Chocolate. He's a 400-plus pound man, built, solid, world's strongest man, tournament winner multiple times. He and her develop a love relationship. Mark Henry was sort of a sexual deviant of sorts, and Mae Young was kind of a pervert. And I think a lot of shock value was based around Mae Young's character. She would, call people sluts, and when Miss Kitty flashed her breasts, Mae Young tried to do a similar thing soon thereafter, and got covered up. And it was always like, oh, it was gross, but there was like a funny shock out of it. So these two developed this relationship. And there's a Valentine's Day scene where they're in bed together in a hotel room, and Mae Young lights up a cigar, and, that was their thing. Well, eventually they write the storyline in that this 77-year-old woman is pregnant with this 450-pound black man's baby. So it's, it's as absurd the two as you could possibly get between the two of them. And they end up having the birth on an episode of Raw. It starts out, the scene is, you can find it on YouTube if you want. They wheel her into one of these like spare rooms in the Coliseum that they're at, and Mae Young lights up a cigar while she's sitting there, and you got everybody. Mark Henry's like doing his best not to laugh his ass off during the segment, and they do like a loud fart noise, like she's trying to push the baby out and farts instead. And Gerald Briscoe literally starts vomiting during the scene because he said he's got a weak stomach, I guess. So he's legitimately vomiting. And the doctor ends up pulling out a hand. It's this gooey hand, and that was like the birth of their child, maybe because of her age. Oh, actually, at one point they asked her when her last period was, and she said 1957. So they do this vulgar thing, and they pull out this, this gooey baby hand, or this hand, and that was their child. And believe it or not, on the Raw 1000th episode back in 2012, they brought Mae Young in for it and had a guy come in dressed in a hand costume that was apparently their grown-up kid. So that's the absurdity of wrestling in a nutshell, right there.
I'll say, tip your hat to WWE for sticking with that one.
Well, it's hard not to. Like I said, it's iconic in all the wrong ways, but it's definitely one of the most things I remembered was that angle.
Oh yeah, I've listened to podcasts with Mark Henry since then, and he said people still call him Sexual Chocolate to this day, and more often than not, the first thing people bring up is the Mae Young hand thing. And he said, I laughed. He's like, it hurt so bad, I was laughing that whole time. He said it was just phenomenal. He said Mae Young was like just the best person in the world to work with. The woman was 77 years old, and she was taking bumps and making comments that 20-year-olds were doing. And it was, kudos to her.
I said she's been performing. I mean, even when she wasn't like a full-time wrestler, she would have, I mean, I've seen her wrestle. She's been in matches when we were watching it, like not very often, but she did have a couple of matches. So, I mean, she passed away not that long ago, but she pretty much nonstop was a performer of some way, shape, or form for, 70 years or 60 some odd years. It's a long time to do anything.
That's true. I mean, I imagine this podcast going for at least 6 or 7 months, let alone 60 or 70 years.
And that'll probably be Haddix's fault. It's fucking chatty Cathy over there.
Well, I'll be the reason we last that long? Is that what you're saying? Because without me, you'd be done already? Yeah, that's what I thought.
I'll have to take a look at how many listens the Full House podcast has had. We'll see about that.
That's unfair, dude. That's a topical podcast.
I think everything we're talking about, I think that's the whole point of this whole podcast is that it's topical. Like, it's not like we're not going to randomly talk about wrestling.
I don't know how topical the Attitude Era is, but
it's true. It's
well, I mean, it's our wrestling month because of WrestleMania,
right? Which, speaking of,
I know I don't feel like I need to explain this. I don't know why I am, but
you have to defend yourself. But as you said, it is WrestleMania, and next week we will be doing our WrestleMania preview podcast. As WrestleMania, by the time the podcast released, will be days before WrestleMania comes out. So we'll review the WrestleMania card, what we think might happen, give some opinions, maybe discuss the WrestleMania weekend as a whole, the Hall of Fame, that kind of thing. And that'll wrap things up for the wrestling topic, which I'm sure will relieve a lot of people and then maybe disappoint some others. But that's what we've got coming for you next week. Don't forget, go subscribe to us on iTunes, all that. Leave us some comments. Tell your friends to listen. Go check out the pseudonerdpod.com. Read our blogs there, and you can listen to that trivia challenge that we had. And I don't know about the rest of you, but Haddix and I are going to go see some Batman vs. Superman this weekend. So go see that, because I'm sure at some point we'll discuss that.
Oh, for sure. I can't wait.
Spoiler alert, Lex Luthor is Mark Zuckerberg.
Spoiler alert, I might be going and seeing it Friday as well. I'm going to say 2 days in a row.
Well, that's not shocking.
Nice.
Maybe even Saturday.
All right. Well, from Public Square to Union Square, I am Josh Kiser. He is Josh Haddix, and he is Kyle Hoagland. We'll see you guys next week.
Have a good Friday.
See you later.